The Extend Path tool in Astute Graphics Vector Scribe allows you to extend or trim existing paths in your Illustrator documents in a number of interesting and useful ways. You can extend paths in the natural direction of their Bezier curves, or you can choose straight extensions, curved extensions, and even spiral extensions. And they're all accessible with some handy keyboard shortcuts. So let's take a look at the Extend Path tool. To get the Extend Path tool, I'll click and hold on the Path Scribe tool in the toolbar and select Extend Path tool. And the first thing to remember about the Extend Path tool is that it only works on open paths. You can't use it to make any changes to closed paths. You can use this tool on a straight open path, but then you can only add straight extensions. So here I have 4 copies of a simple open curved path, and we'll use them to experiment with the 4 different extension modes of the Extend Path tool. To see what those modes are, I'm going to open the tool's preferences by double-clicking on it in the toolbar. I could also just press Return or Enter when I have the tool. And in the dialog box under Extension mode, I see the 4 options. Single Bezier, which continues the current direction of a Bezier curve. Constant Radius, which by default takes the radius at the end of a Bezier curve and continues it in circular fashion. Straight, which continues in a straight line. And Spiral with Winding Constant, which also includes a setting for controlling how many times the spiral winds around. I'm going to select Single Bezier and click OK. And this is the option that will continue the curve at the end of the path. If I move my cursor with the tool over the end of any of these paths, I see little handles that I can click and drag to extend or trim the paths. I'll click and hold on one of the endpoints in the bottom left example, and I get a preview of how the path can be extended with the single Bezier mode. See how it follows the curve along and even goes off the artboard into infinity here. And if I want to extend the path like this, I can just click and drag, even just a little bit, and release. I can click again and extend the path some more. Notice that when I encounter a path segment, the tool snaps to it, whether it's the same path or a different path. If you find the snapping is getting in your way and not allowing you to put an endpoint where you want it to be, you can disable the snapping by holding Command or Control as you drag. Now there's no snapping, and if I release Command or Control, the snapping comes back. Also notice that as I drag, there's a display by my cursor showing me the full path length and the length of the extension that I'm creating. If you like this, you can leave it as is, or if you find it distracting, you can turn it off in the preferences, or just tap the letter L. Remember L for length, and tap L again to bring the annotation back. If you want to trim a path and make it shorter than it currently is, you just drag back in the other direction. So I can click and drag back like so. But notice now that I have in effect erased that curve, if I click on the new endpoint, the path can only be extended in a straight direction. There's no trace of the original curve left to follow. So I'll undo to get it back. And let's extend both ends of this path up a little, just so we have a little visual reminder of what the single Bezier option does. Now let's click on the next path and hold. Again, I see a preview of the extension. And now instead of going to the preferences, I'm going to choose a different extension mode with a keyboard shortcut, which is the letter E, E for extend. And when I press E, I get the next extension mode, which is constant radius. And you can see that by default, it takes the radius of the curve at the endpoint and maintains it through the extension to create a semicircular shape. Unlike the Bezier option, the constant radius will not create an extension that goes on forever. It stops after making a semicircle. If you want to create a circular extension with a different radius, you can do that by going to the preferences and switching the radius mode. I'll press Return or Enter. And under Radius mode, we can select Scale Radius at Path Endpoint, and I'll make it 50%. Click OK. I'll click on the other endpoint, and you can see we get a smaller semicircle here. I can also use my left and right arrow keys to change that scale value dynamically. So I'll click and hold and press my right arrow key, and I can see the scale of the radius increase. I'm going to go all the way to 200%. And drag out the extension. I can continue on, and this time I'll decrease the radius down to about 130%, and again drag out the extension. And there's another cool keyboard shortcut you can use with the constant radius to reverse the curvature. Just click and hold and press the letter V, and you can see the extension preview curve off in the opposite direction. Okay, let's select another path, and again click and hold on an endpoint and press the letter E, and I switch to the next extension mode, which is straight. You can see the extension preview lines that continue on straight, and they'll go past the edge of the artboard and out on forever. I'll click and drag right to where the extension previews intersect and release, and do the same on the right side. Now note this is not a closed path right now. The two endpoints are aligned but not joined. If I wanted to join them, I can just select them with the direct selection tool and press Command or Control J to join them. And now this is a closed path. Now let's switch back to the Extend Path tool, and we'll try the last extension mode, which is Spiral. First, I'll zoom in on this last path a little bit, and again with the tool, I'll click and hold on an endpoint, press the letter E, and I get my spirals. Like the other modes, I can just drag along the extension preview and release wherever I want the path to end. I'll undo, and show that you can control the number of times the spiral winds around. You can do that either by pressing Return or Enter and setting a number here in the dialog box, or more intuitively, you can tap the up or down arrow key on your keyboard to increase or decrease the complexity of the spiral. And if you drag while using the arrow keys, the value changes a lot faster. I'll go to about 0.3 and drag out the extension. You can also use the same keyboard shortcuts that work with the constant radius mode. So on this other endpoint, I can click and hold and press V to reverse the curvature, and I can press my left and right arrows to change the radius. I'll go down to about 100% and drag out the extension. Now there's one more thing I want to show you, and that's the ability to constrain the length of a path extension. If I go back to the preferences, I can see down here, Constrain Length by Multiples. I'll select that, and I can either constrain the total length of the path or just the change in length. I'll select the change and click OK. And the increment here is going to be the same as my keyboard increment in Illustrator's general preferences. So I'll press Command or Control K to open the preferences and set the keyboard increment to something large, like what I have right here, 20 pixels, and click OK. And I'll draw out a straight line with the Line Segment tool, and then use the Extend Path tool to draw out an extension. And you can see that as I drag, I snap to 20-point increments. I can also trim the path by 20 points at a time. And if I press the letter C on my keyboard, I can turn the constraining preference off and make the line however long I want. In this movie, we used the Extend Path tool in VectorScribe to extend a few open paths in different ways. We added straight extensions, spiral extensions, circular extensions, and extensions that followed the last Bezier curve on a path. You can also use the tool to trim paths as well. And the tool has easy-to-use options and keyboard shortcuts for adjusting the shape and length of the extensions.